for media buyers, for television networks, Nielsen is really the drunk uncle, right? Which is, it's somehow it became the standard of what our uncle is, but nobody really cares that much when they show up at your door because they're just going to be there.
Welcome to Punchy by Rival, where we take the gloves off to share the hard-hitting realities of the challenger marketing world. Each week, we'll break down the buzz and cut through the BS, the top stories and trends to tell you what you really need to know and do differently to grow your brand and career. Damn it. I was trying to make my entrance and I was on mute. Oh, that sucks. So painful. The funny thing is, I was trying to comment on how smooth my transition was, pulling everybody up behind the countdown. Anyway, God. All right, how we doing?
Eric.
Yeah, let's just move on. Robert, how are you? Thanks so much for joining us so early from LA.
I'm doing well, and I'll just tell you, it was seamless. It was absolutely brilliant. It was everything a late night show should be. Is really it.
The problem is, it was seamless. It's just that I was on mute. But
that's right. Yeah.
Next time. I mean, as we were talking about before we press record, your podcast, which I'm a big fan of, this whole marketing. You said you were on 350 episodes, and that it took you and Joe kind of like 40 episodes, 332 to get into the groove. So we've still got some time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we're still working it out. I mean, we're still trying to figure out what the hell's going on.
Constant work in progress. That's that could be the slogan for Punchy. Dubose, I see that you have taken Jenna's seat in the Outback Steakhouse today.
No rules, just right. Just here in a WeWork booth. So I always wonder if they got a bulk deal on these or if there's someone who's constructing these bespoke for each WeWork. But this is a nice one. Good lighting, no ventilation, everything you want in summer.
Jenna, how are you?
I'm good. Is that still the Outback Steakhouse slogan? Have they changed it? Is it still no rules, just right? That seems old.
Well, you wouldn't go wrong. And it's not like they instituted rules. So
they may have done. They probably had rules during the pandemic.
It's true. Maybe it's just right then.
Yeah, that's fair. No, I'm good. I'm air conditioned and I don't need an Outback Steakhouse, so I'm doing really good.
And I see you got your mic stand this time. Well done.
No, it's just sitting on my laptop. I'm actually holding it because I'm not at a desk. I'm just like sitting on my couch. It's really professional. If we do 350 episodes of this, I'll get a mic stand then.
Deal.
It's a good investment here first. It really is.
Yeah.
I will set a calendar reminder for 2029. So make sure that you have your mic stand by then. All right, here we go. So getting into it, we got 3 stories and a couple things in the grab bag to get to today. So the first is an article from Marketing Dive on 50% of marketers impede ROI by underinvesting in media. There's a study by Nielsen. The second is going to be from Ad Age. Dubose, I know you're passionate about talking about Peloton as a challenger brands. So Peloton will outsource bike and treadmill production as it overhauls business. And then lastly, from Bloomberg UK, Spotify's billion-dollar bet on podcasting has yet to pay off. So let's start with the article on 50% of marketers impede ROI by underinvesting in media. So about half of marketers are not spending enough in a channel to get maximum ROI, according to Nielsen's first ever. It's hard to believe this is their first ever ROI report, actually. But they've come up with this.
Really?
I don't know. I guess it's the first time they branded it this way.
Okay.
They've come up with this 50-50-50 gap headline or concept based on their report, and they might have something to gain from this. But the report found that while about 50% of media plans are underinvested by a median of 50%, ROI can be improved by 50%. The other thing I thought was interesting is that they kind of made this claim of social media in general, I guess, delivers 1.7x the ROI of TV, and that influencer marketing ROI is comparable to that of mainstream, quote unquote, media. Jenna, I'm going to throw this one to you. Do you want to go hands on this or whatever the opposite is of hands?
I don't know what the opposite of throwing hands would be. I don't know. Singing Kumbaya.
Picking up hands.
Holding hands. I don't know. I don't know. I have a hard time having a really strong opinion about this because I just kind of like brush this off as like a little bit of a like yeah, like, well, like one, what else is new? I feel like any media planner or buyer that's like ever come in with a, okay, you asked us to achieve X reach target, this is what X reach target costs, and then brand marketers are like, well, sorry, like you want $2 million, I've only got a budget of $1 million. It's like, well, this is not like a surprise to any media planner who's ever had to plan a campaign that like campaigns are routinely underinvested in. As for some of like the, the ROI specific things, I was like trying to like go back in and like look at the methodology of this, because they're like, oh, it's, a couple different data sources. What they said, they did meta-analysis across a bunch of different samples that include like MMMs, brand impact studies, marketing plans, and expenditure data. Like some of these things, like I really wonder, like for influencer especially, where it's like, how is this data being reported? I don't really know. I feel that I've disappointed you and that you really were looking for like a particularly sharp opinion on this one, but I'm just kind of ho-hum on this. I'm like,
It's so unlike you. I thought I'd get a couple sharp opinions, but maybe Robert,
with Nielsen.
maybe
yeah,
Nielsen. All right, fine, fair enough.
Who's got strong opinions about Nielsen? I find it hard to be really worked up about that. They're a little, I don't know.
Robert, do you have strong opinions about Nielsen?
Well, I'm not sure that they're strong opinions per se, but they're certainly, I think, well, let's call it one-sided. Nevertheless, how strong they may be. Look, I came out of television originally, and Nielsen over the years, for media buyers, for television networks, Nielsen is really the drunk uncle, right? Which is, it's somehow it became the standard of what our uncle is, but nobody really cares that much when they show up at your door, because they're just going to be there. And with this, I'm shocked. I'm shocked that Nielsen, on the cusp of, relevance with streaming, and the cusp of launching a brand new audience measurement product that, quote unquote, measures outcomes, as well as the size of your audience, would launch a new research in the sort of coincidental sort of timing of the new product launch to say, oh my goodness, audience measurement's really important, and you're spending not enough money on paid media. So, one might think that they're actually doing some content marketing here. And so I think it's definitely the time. The study seems fine. I'm definitely, the study seems fine. The one thing I will say about the whole influencer marketing and social media aspect of this, which is, that doesn't tell me that we're not putting enough money into social media and it's got enough ROI there. That's neither here nor there. What it tells me is that we're spending way too much money on television, right? That the television is basically overpriced.
Dubose?
I mean, I have a few problems with this. I think the first one is, if you're going to go for the rule of threes, don't do it with numbers, because I think 50, 50, 50, I've just started it up on a sheet here. That's 150.
Yeah.
So I feel like we're over 100%, and I have a problem with believing any statistics that someone frankly puts out after that. But I think the other thing, and it's something we have covered, is there's an obviousness to this. It's almost as if someone has discovered diminishing returns and then found that not a lot of media buyers are actually hitting it. Instead, they're just kind of seeing diminishing returns somewhere in the horizon and backing off. And I think, as someone who started their career in media, it's funny because I always thought, you go until you hit diminishing returns and then you go find other channels. And I think what we're seeing here is, obviously you can invest a lot more in certain channels. I do find the way that they've started to discuss television versus influencers versus mainstream channels as a bit of a dubious distinction. One where one would almost assume there's a research study and then someone went, it doesn't have the quota of influencers or social media in it. Please go back to the research mine and find us something else. But I think there's some interesting yet obvious points. But yeah, you kind of go, you'd expect something a bit punchier from someone wanting to go PR a view of the market in the world.
It's like
That's the
SEO
name of the
guys
show.
got a hold of it.
It's the name of the show.
You said
it's like,
Punchy.
we got to go back to the future.
Yeah, you said the name of the show.
These really are fast times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah, I don't know. I get why they had to do it on ROI, right? Like, 'cause I mean, like, that's really the only thing that you can like hold standard across, a meta analysis of a lot of like different marketing expenditures. But again, like, I also and maybe I don't know, maybe this is like a trend, like a trendiness like issue, but it's like ROI, like, is that really like the best way that we're looking at like our marketing effectiveness and like really again like how well our marketing spend was doing? I don't know. I understand that there's a limitation of how they can do the data analysis, but no, I think I definitely agree with the drunk uncle. I don't care, Nielsen. I don't know. Yeah, the cusp of relevance is about right. I'm just not that. I don't care. I don't care.
Nielsen, if you only show up for Christmas and Thanksgiving, like we're going to give you the worst seat at the table. So
and you're not allowed to turn them away. Basically, all you can do is put them in the back bedroom and put on the game for them.
They drove at least 2 hours.
I think there's something to this. I think we should probably get in touch with Nielsen. I think there's a marketing campaign in here somewhere. All right. 10 points to Robert for bringing up the drunk uncle analogy. Dubose, you get 10 points for working Punchy into your answer, the name of the show. Jenna, I'm going to give you 5 points. I think you're warming up. I think you're warming up. I think 5 points is very fair.
That's reasonable. However, I think that it should be the opposite. If there should be negative points awarded every time Dubose says the name of the show, because I feel like it's going to become a crutch, and he's going to do it, and you're incentivizing the wrong behavior, Eric.
I can't put the genie back into the bottle on this one.
Feedback taken and motion denied.
Oh, there's already a coup brewing. I can see.
There's been a few of these. Luckily, Punchy is a dictatorship, not a democracy, and the points don't mean anything anyway. So, Jenna, I realized I totally forgot to put you on the spot and have you do the Stefan marketing skit. Are we going to do that, or are we going to regroup and figure out where that does or doesn't fit into the show?
Let's regroup and decide if I'm a serious person with serious professional opinions, or if nothing matters and I don't know something.
Can it be both?
It can be both. I can be both. Yeah.
All right, moving on. Here we go. So 10-10-5 going into the second round. Peloton will outsource bike and treadmill production as it overhauls its business. So this was covered in a bunch of different outlets, but I pulled the article from Ad Age. So Peloton Interactive said it would stop making its own exercise bikes as the company is racing against time. Nice pun there, to overhaul its business model and lower overhead. So Dubose, I'm going to start with you because Peloton is the example that you always use as a challenger brand that has not succeeded in becoming a rival, which we define as successfully disrupting a category and becoming the new incumbent. So I'll give you the first go at this to comment on what this means and whether or not this just reinforces your perspective of Peloton as an unsuccessful challenger brand.
I mean, this isn't wholly surprising. So I think it's worth disclaiming at the beginning of this. I was previously a Peloton owner. I am one of the few, the proud, the ones who actually managed to gain weight while owning and using it. So that was quite impressive. But I think the thing that really strikes me and has always struck me about Peloton is you have two sides of this business, and they've let each other down at different times. You have the hardware side of this business that, for years was famously not able to meet the demand that people were looking for when literally everyone was going, we can't leave our homes, please give us a bike. And then later on, they have too many. And then on the other side, you have the content arm, which they've always talked about. And I refuse to use the Netflix of construct liberally, but they've always aimed to be the Netflix of fitness. And you get it, like the way they're promoting themselves, the way they're talking about themselves at the moment. They're trying to make their instructors integral parts of culture. Cody Rigsby going on Dancing with the Stars, clothing lines being launched by some of the other instructors, trying to kind of get a footprint and a presence there. It's not surprising that at a certain point, with those two things never firing at the same time they've decided to lean into one over the other. And I think the intriguing thing is, hardware, especially given the fact that I think they've always struggled to get the supply chain to work in lockstep. And they've had problems with, talking about the treadmill, looking at launching a rower. All of these things are probably best done by someone else. But what it's really done now is it's put all of their eggs in the idea of you're going to have to deliver content and personalities and a workout experience that's unique and compelling on its own. And I think the intriguing thing there is the boat's probably sailed a little bit. I think there was a period where they were about 6 months behind where the opportunity was to really embed a routine that would be a complementary option to people working out in gyms or working out outside. You had a captive audience. That captive audience is gone. People in most countries are going back to the gym. They're not worried about COVID at the levels they were before. And I don't think Peloton has made a compelling argument to say, we're something you should consider while you're thinking about going back to a gym or you're thinking about working out outside. And I think it's interesting because the debate's now moved. It wasn't gym versus home anymore. Now it's what unique workout can you give us? And I don't think they've done enough content development, experience development to seriously compete in that space. So to that point, I think for me, they'll always be a challenger that had an amazing amount of potential, but now is basically back at square one and needs to figure out a new way to challenge the market.
And I remember when you first started using that example, as we talk about incumbent brands that are kind of pervasive, but nobody, they don't hold kind of like any type of sharpness in the market anymore. You talk about American Express, Peloton as the example of challenger. I was like, but isn't that more of like a hardware supply chain kind of shifting behaviors around COVID type thing? But everything you said, just now, it really helped me understand how the brand and how the marketing side of it contributed to their inability to really disrupt and become the new incumbent in this market. Robert, I'll throw it over to you. What are your thoughts on either what Dubose just said or the article in general?
Yeah, well, 100% agreed with everything that you guys just talked about, which is, but the interesting thing to me is, so this is going all the way back to my old, I got the gray hair now, so I've been a consultant for 30 years. And this is what this reminds me of is going all the way back to the early 2000s, a thing that we used to call polishing the rock, which is, it was last year, I think, that the news broke about Peloton hiring McKinsey to come in and sort of sort out their business. And anytime there's a news article about you hiring McKinsey, it's not going well. And so one of the things that I think is coming out of this is, of course, McKinsey recommendations. I'm sure there's a giant PowerPoint deck floating around that business somewhere that talks about how you need to get out of the supply chain business. Basically, you need to not be manufacturing your own thing. Why? Because what we're doing is we're polishing the rock, getting you ready for sale. And so everything is about jettisoning all the costs, all the sort of really low margin cost, so that it looks like a much better acquisition target, which they are. They're a great acquisition target. The other thing that I find interesting is the fact, speaking of the instructors, there's been a bunch of press lately about how the instructors are actually doing quite well, in terms of building personal brands and building incomes. So it's like the instructors know how to make a business out of this thing. It's a little frustrating. I'm sure that Peloton hasn't figured out how to make a business out of this thing. So it'll be interesting to see, but my prediction would be within the next 12 months, Peloton gets acquired.
Jenna?
I agree with everything Robert said. I don't know. I definitely, I was like, okay, like as soon as they said that they're dumping the hardware business, I was like, that's a consultant move. Cause I do feel like, Dubose, to your point about like, they really wanted to create this such a marketing phrase, workout experience. They really hate that. A workout experience. But yeah, like as like kind of like a fitness ecosystem. Like I think that honestly, in order to do that well, really would have required that they maintain control over like their hardware production, much like Foxconn is, technically Foxconn is a vendor, but functionally is just a subsidiary of Apple. And this just doesn't seem like, that they're really taking, I think, and again, I really hate to use Apple as like an example, but the example of Apple where it's like, hey, the hardware experience is so crucial to your brand experience, which I think is arguably one of the reasons why they're so like locked down about those things. And that Peloton is just going to choose not to do that, to me says, you're never going to be like the Equinox, but for the mass consumer a little bit. So I was kind of like, all right, well, I hope you enjoyed relevance while it lasted. Yeah, I think you get acquired in 12 months, and it's just another company.
Any predictions on who's going to acquire them from anybody?
Oh, I mean, you've got some interesting ones here, right? Like, because if you're focusing on the content business, then basically you could slot into any device with a tablet on it running Android. So you've obviously got the Nikes, the Lululemons of the world that could easily just go, okay, this is great. You've got the Soul Cycles, the Amazons of the world that have started playing around with different elements of either a similar product, like the Soul Cycle bike at home, or you've got Amazon that was starting to look at Echelon and others as kind of a lower price point in, and being able to drop premium content on something like that when you can take a hit for it for the first few years while you start to build credibility in the space could be really, really interesting. So, it could be a variety of them. I would love it to be someone like 24-hour fitness, just because putting the 24-hour fitness branding on something that's tried to deliver such a slick UX it's schadenfreude at every level. And I really want to see it.
I had no idea Lululemon had a $33 billion market cap.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yoga
Absolutely.
pants,
I don't
man.
actually, I guess I don't know. I mean, I know the brand, but I don't know the business that well. It's
Those
definitely
trousers aren't cheap.
No, they're very expensive.
You ever try to buy like a men's lined running short from Lululemon? You got to take a mortgage out for that, but it's comfortable.
Right. That's right. Or a yoga pant, right? Yeah.
Exactly.
Apple would be the other candidate I would throw out there. Apple could acquire Peloton for what is ostensibly a bucket of pucks. So, they wouldn't even breathe hard.
Nice. I see what you did there. All right. Going to give another 10 points to Robert, particularly for the pun at the end. Dubose, I think you did a great job with this one. 10 points. Jenna, I'm going to give you 7. How do we feel about that?
I've got a lot of really good opinions about like tech businesses running creative businesses for the Spotify one, so I think I can catch up on this last one.
Okay,
that's fine.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, let's go there. I was going to start with Robert on this one, but let's start with you, and then we can build with Robert. So, Spotify's billion-dollar bet on podcasting has yet to pay off. This is from Bloomberg UK. Despite all of Spotify's spending on podcasting, it accounted for only 7% of total listening hours in the first quarter of 2022 and 2% of revenue last year. Obviously, the headline here was when they purchased Joe Rogan and his show, and obviously they've gone around and have bought up a lot of the other big podcasting properties. So, Jenna, kick us off. What are your strong opinions on this story?
I will never get tired of reading stories about like how like tech or like really like heavily like corporate businesses try to get into like the content and creative production and fucking suck at it. It's my favorite like schadenfreude to read, because without failure, it's always just we hired all these really great content creators and then we consistently ignored their ideas for years and just didn't want to do the things that they wanted. And I just really love that seems to be almost exact like a lot of like what's happened like with the Spotify podcasting. If you read the Bloomberg article, which was very good, I thought this was an enjoyable read. It just details again like all the mistakes of like we got this really great audience, we got this great creator on board, and then we tried to meddle with it in the business and didn't listen to their ideas, and now we wonder what's happened. It's my favorite. I really enjoy it. I really enjoy the schadenfreude from this. That's my strong opinion to start with.
Robert, I know you've got a lot of opinions on this topic in general of technology and media companies buying content producers. But what about either in general or this story specifically? Would love to hear from you.
Yeah, well, I'll speak a little more. I mean, I feel your schadenfreude. I absolutely feel your schadenfreude. So there it is. But this is the most Bloombergy of all Bloombergy articles ever, where this is definitely a story looking for some headline. Because if you read the story, they don't really have any evidence that Spotify is doing poorly. They just say that, hey, the stock's off. Well, yeah, the stock's off for everybody, by the way, including Netflix and including Airbnb and including every other media company and tech company on the planet, 70% off at the moment. So, I struggle a bit with the angle that the reporter took here in terms of getting to the headline. However, having said that, I agree. I think it's really hard for tech companies like this to acquire content and get into the original content business because they have to, right? They have to get into the original. Netflix provided the model here, right? Which is license content for as much as you can to get the awareness and reach that you need to build the audience. And then you have to build in high margin original content because that's the only way it can go. We can argue whether they overpaid for Rogan, whether they've overpaid for some of the things that they've acquired and the sort of quality of stuff that they've launched in the podcast space. But I think generally speaking, I like their business. I think Elk is a thoughtful person in terms of the way that they're going about things. We'll see. I think the headline is it remains to be seen whether or not they can actually get into the original content business and make it work at scale. Because I just don't think I agree. They haven't proven that they can do it yet.
What do you think, Robert, about so one of the things in the article is talking about a new structure for their podcasting business. So they're going to have one executive who's overseeing original programming, and then one executive who's managing the relationships with the third parties, with the creators. What do you think about that move?
I think that tells you all you need to say about what, which ones they're going to prioritize and how they're going to divide up the business. Therefore, is they're going to do, I believe they're going to do exactly what Netflix did, which is slowly start to whittle down the, only the highest performing and easiest to manage sets of licensing around, what they're, mostly music, obviously, but what they're looking at in terms of a licensing agreement. And it's a little different than the movie business or the television business, because you're not actually buying or licensing series, you're licensing artists. And so those artists, include an entire catalog, right? Tons of stuff we could also talk about, Crosby, Stills and Nash and the boycott over Rogan, and where, what music is available and what music isn't. And that's a whole set of problems. And so an executive in charge of that is probably a good idea, but putting someone in charge of original programming makes all the sense in the world to me, to try and figure out what they're going to do and build a business around it. Now, we can argue whether or not that person is the best person for the job, and again, I think that comes down to execution.
Yep.
But I guess, like, Robert, like, to your point earlier, where I definitely take your point about, like, well, there's not like a lot of evidence for this. It's just kind of like that the share price is off. I was looking at this more from the angle of, like, they just haven't been able, like, again, like, they bought these audiences, they bought Joe Rogan, they bought, like I said, like, a couple other folks, but they haven't yet, like, then been able to produce any, like, or like, any significant, like, quality, not even anything of like the same size or scale of a Joe Rogan, but that they, had the relationships, like I say, with the Obamas, with some of the other folks in the world, and they just really haven't gotten like any good originals out of it.
Totally.
Do you think that
agreed.
that's like
100% agreed? Yeah. 100% agreed. I think that, personally, I think they bet on the wrong horse with Rogan.
Agreed.
I don't know that anybody ever thought the Obamas were going to have a great podcast, by the way. It's like, that's just, that's to your point, that's a misunderstanding of the podcast world, right? Of the podcast audience. And so, it's I think you're exactly right. They have not yet proven that they can acquire, media and the audiences therein in a way that's going to be sustainable.
It's so interesting because I go back to, I think there's a campaign Spotify did about 3 years ago called Listen Like You Used To, where they were talking about the breadth of the back catalog of music that they had. And it was so interesting because I think somewhere wrapped up in one of the numerous campaign write-ups, campaign strategy pieces they had there, they were talking about the challenge that basically users have about 100 songs they listen to on Spotify, which is hilarious if you think about it, because you basically have the world's entire recorded music history at your fingertips. And you're like, I'm going to listen to Jock Jams Volume 3 again because that's what I like at the gym. And I think, it's interesting because at a certain point, every streaming provider must be absolutely terrified that someone's just going to go, this value equation just doesn't add up anymore because I don't care about the breadth you're providing. And I think it's interesting that, podcasts are just another string in that bow of trying to expand the value prop and the breadth that you get consumers to engage with. And I think the point both y'all raise is, I don't think they figured out the right mix of stimulus, talent, content yet to push users into that neighborhood effectively. And I think it's funny because, everything we've said, like when tech companies do approach making creative, making content, it's a bit like, at best, you're buying a butterfly to pull the wings off of it most of the time. At worst, you attempted to make art as if it was a business. And I think a lot of the time, the irrationality, the creativity that you normally find in art isn't there. I think if you have a cushion like Netflix, then you can kind of system your way to it. But a lot of the time, it's a real challenge. And I think when you look at something like Spotify, I do think the article treats them a bit harshly. I'm now going to claim that every business model is failing because the market is down. So, claim that Walmart hasn't succeeded, and maybe one day it'll find its feet. But I do think there is an endemic challenge here in the way that users behave on the platform, that this is just another symptom of, that they're just not fully there yet in how they can solidify that value prop to consumers. And this is going to have to be one way they figure that out.
So I'll tell you one business model that's not failing. and that is the partnership between Taco Bell and Cheez-It.
Oh, here we
So
go.
just to go to our grab bag real quick, because I know that we're out of time, but one of us was very keen to comment on this story. So Taco Bell pulls Cheez-It Tostada and Big Cheez-It Crunchwrap early due to huge demand. This is from the Houston Chronicle, which is a constant source of stories for our show here. So said a representative from Taco Bell, it's clear that Taco Bell and Cheez-It fans want more of this craveable collaboration. We can't promise that it'll be rolled out nationwide, but never say never. So Dubose, I think you are actually the president of the overlap of the Venn diagram between Taco Bell and Cheez-It fans. What say you about the Big Cheez-It Tostada and Big Cheez-It Crunchwrap?
What can I say that hasn't already been said by food critics and food enthusiasts around the world? I mean, I think, the thing on this is I applaud Taco Bell once again redefining what food is. And I think, going further by staring at a vending machine for roughly 25 seconds and then taking the bet to try to combine the two items that someone randomly picked. But I really want to try this. I can't wait to get the states to do it. And I think at this point, either roll it out nationally or make it a cult product that just shows up at random Taco Bells for 24-hour drops. But like the McRib used to do. I think it was The Simpsons where Homer drove around the country trying to find where had the McRib at any decent point. I will buy a 1967 VW van and drive around while my wife rethinks all of her life decisions to find the Cheez-It Tostada at Taco Bell and eat it. I will make that happen. But yeah, that's all I have to say about this. Bravo to everyone at the Taco Bell test kitchen. Godspeed. You're really doing God's work.
Oh man. All right.
With a flourish.
Well done, Dubose. So I would give you a lot of points for that, but we have to let Robert be the winner because I totally stole the rant and rave segment of this podcast from his podcast. So Robert, you actually did earn a lot of points. You have 30 points, that's a lot of points for Punchy, actually. Yeah.
Is it? Is it the most ever?
Actually, no. Marcus from VaynerMedia, the chief of staff from he was.
Oh, of course, VaynerMedia.
He could have won.
Of course, it had to be somebody from VaynerMedia.
His rant or rave was about door holding etiquette and how it needs to be tighter because it can get really awkward. Like, how long do you hold the door open for somebody who's behind you? I told him I would give him, I think it was 250 points if he spun that into a marketing rant or rave, but I actually don't think that he stuck the landing on that one. So,
all right.
Yeah. 30 points is pretty good. So, Robert, rant or rave, what have you got for us?
I have something very quick here, which is this week, the James Webb Telescope launched, and I think reminded us all about what coming together as humanity really means. I think in the world right now where it feels divided and awful, and we feel horrible about ourselves and about decisions that are getting made around different things, around our bodies and our lives and our beliefs. It just was a really refreshing, wonderful thing to start to realize how small our disagreements really are and how petty they really are in the scope of the universe. And it's the content coming out of NASA and the new photos are just, they're almost spiritual in a way in terms of, what they're showing us. So huge rave to NASA and the James Webb team and all of that for the new telescope.
Love that.
That was almost as good as when I said, LOL, we're ants when I posted those photos on our internal Slack channel. same
just
sentiment.
As eloquent. Yeah.
Just as eloquent. LOL, we're ants. Yeah, that was the same thing.
I thought you were just trying to get out of status because you just went, nothing else matters. Lol, we're ants. And then
I think I said marketing doesn't matter. I think it was a reminder that like marketing doesn't matter. We're ants. There's a James Webb Telescope.
There it is.
Like, yeah.
All right. I think that's a great place to leave it. Robert, thank you so much for joining today and putting up with us.
Absolutely a pleasure.
And we will see you next time. Punchy is a production of Rival. We are a growth consultancy that builds challenger brands, strategies, and capabilities to disrupt categories. If you want to learn more about us, check out wearerival.com. If you want to connect with Jenna, Dubose, or myself, email us at media@wearerival.com or find us on LinkedIn. If you enjoyed today's show, please subscribe, share with anyone you think might enjoy it, and leave us a review. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.